Hi, my name is Angel. Welcome back to my channel. I know we are a little bit of the ways into 2024 now, but I had so many other reading plans for the beginning of this year that I'm just now getting to this one, but that is reading the New York Times Best Horror List of 2023. I will link their actual article in the description if you guys want to go check it out for yourselves and see what they have to say about these books. But there were 10 books on the list, so I'll pop those up on the side of me. Out of those 10 books, there were 2 that I've already read. One was a 4-star and one was 3.5 stars. And then from the remaining books, there were a few that I have heard of at least once or seen mentioned somewhere, which leaves 3 books that I had never heard of before viewing this list, which I just thought was really interesting. So all of the books that I haven't already read, I will be reading in this video. So if you guys want to see my thoughts and opinions on any of these books, then go ahead and keep watching. Hopefully this angle doesn't suck, but I now have most of the books for this video. I just went and picked all of these up from the library. I have Our Share of Night, Silver Nitrate, The Salt Grows Heavy, Lone Women, and Human Sacrifices. And then I have The Sanctuary checked out on Libby, and then that one short story collection, I think it's called No One Will Come Back for Us, or No One Will Save Us, whatever that one is called. I have a Hold on Libby, which should be here pretty soon, I hope. And then the only other book that I don't have is the Insatiable Volt Sisters, which is being transferred to my library, so I get to pick that one up in a few days. But these are all here. I love like the color scheme of some of these, like the red and the black is so pretty. If I had like a physical copy of The Sanctuary as well, like that would go so good. Anyway, I was trying to figure out which book I want to read first, but it turns out that these 2 are 14-day books, which means that they are due sooner than the rest of them. Obviously, they're due in 14 days anyways. But it also happens that these are the 2 that I was leaning towards the most. I really want to read Silver Nitrate because it has that like horror film aspect that sounds really interesting to me. And then this is a short story collection, I believe, and I want to read the 2 short story collections along with some of these other books. So I think that worked out perfectly that these 2 are due first, and so I think I'm going to start with them first. I'm back with an update. I have started the first book for this video, and actually it was neither of the 2 books that I told you I was going to read first. I started The Sanctuary by Gustavo Eduardo Abrevaya. I don't know how to pronounce that name. Translated by Andrea Lebinger. Oh my god, I'm so horrible. I need to look up names before I try to pronounce them on camera. Anyways, this book has me very curious because I know in the list there were a lot of books that I'd never heard of before, but I figured that they were pretty well known like within the horror community because a lot of the time there are books that are really popular that I've never heard of. But I didn't look up any of the books on Goodreads when I went through the list, but because I started reading this one, I did check Goodreads, and it only has 71 ratings like total on Goodreads, which is like really low, and it just has me very curious. Like, I don't know anything about this, but it just makes me wonder like how this list was curated, who created this list, especially with such a big name as New York Times. It was just really surprising to me that this book has such a few amount of readers. It was just very interesting. Anyways, we start off, we have this couple, a husband and wife, that were driving somewhere through the desert and their car broke down, and that's pretty much where the book starts off, is with them with their broken down car, and they're trying to figure out what to do. And this guy comes up and he's like, oh, 2 miles down the road you can walk, there's a motel, there's like a small town, like very small desert town. There's a motel, a bar, like a shop, and a mechanic there, and that's pretty much it. So he's like, I know this mechanic, he's the only mechanic anywhere nearby, like he can take a look at the car, but you just have to walk 2 miles down the road and you can sleep at the motel tonight. So they end up doing that, leaving their car there. They go back to the motel, and we are now in the next morning where the husband wakes up and finds that the wife is gone, and it's still pretty early on in the day, so he doesn't really think like too hard about it. Like, he's not freaking out yet because it is such a small area. He's like, well, she's got to be here somewhere because like how could you get lost in this small town? So he's not like super worried, and then he meets up with the mechanic, and the mechanic tells him it's going to be a couple of days before they can drive the car. So now he's just there. The male main character is like this indie filmmaker, so he's kind of just always carrying around this camera and like filming everything. And then his wife was like a, you know, the actress for his like films that he aspires to create. But he is really not a good person. There was literally a quote where he was talking about like thinking about his wife like missing possibly, and he was like, oh, she could be all alone out there in the desert, like. And he was like, oh, I hate to think of her getting like raped, but even worse if she got seduced. And I'm like, so clearly he's not a good person. I mean, I didn't really think much of him to begin with. So far my thoughts are, it's boring. This is a much shorter book than I was expecting. I think it's like 195 pages, so I'm only about 40 pages in so far, like very, very early on in the story. I don't really know where it's gonna go from here. Hopefully we get to uncover some horrors within this town, but I don't know if it's gonna be more of like a realistic horror and like this woman got kidnapped and is being brutalized and horrible things are being done to her, or if it's gonna be like kind of supernatural and kind of weird and there's something strange going on in the town. I'm not sure if we're going to get answers. I don't know where the story's gonna go at this point. But this is a very interesting writing style, but I feel like it's always hard to tell with writing style, especially when the words have been translated. I know a lot of translators do a really good job of carrying across like the tone and the feeling and everything that the author was originally trying to get across, but it does make it a little bit difficult to decipher if like, is it just this author's writing style that's weird to me, or is it just like something within the translation that makes it come off the way that it does? I don't know if I'm really enjoying the writing so far. Not really sure if I'm enjoying this story at all, but I'm going to keep reading for the sake of the video, and I will let you guys know how it goes. I'm almost halfway through The Sanctuary now. I think I'm like 45% or so, and I'm definitely enjoying it a lot more now. I know yesterday I said it was kind of boring, but I think I may have judged it a little bit prematurely because it's definitely picking up in like the horror factor. I think on Goodreads this is described as like a crime fiction and also like a horror story, and it definitely has those elements. Obviously the main character, his wife is missing, and we're just kind of following him around this little town as he tries to search for her and talk to different people, and he's discovering a lot of different things about this town. So far he's gone to the mayor, and he's gone to a morgue, and he's gone to the police and interacted with different people. He went and talked to the mayor, and the mayor was not very helpful, but he basically told him like it's not unlikely for bad things to happen in this town, and he told him not to stay out after dark because it gets really dangerous. So that's been interesting. He has also found, oh my god, the cat. He has also found this building that was labeled like the home for children with special needs, which has become a part of the main storyline as well, which is really interesting. We're just learning a lot of new things. One thing I will say is like the main character doesn't really seem to have a mind of his own. Like he doesn't think for himself. He's just kind of interacting with these different people, and then whatever they tell him to do is where he goes to next. He's not really making his own decisions, and I wonder if that is going to have some part in the story or like the character arc and just what happens in the story, him not making decisions for himself. Another thing I will say about this book is that it will not be for everybody just based off of the writing style. Like it's very dense and very wordy, and there are a lot of pages that go on without paragraph breaks. Things are very, very descriptive. Like when he goes to the mayor's house and he walks in this room, there's like this big table with all kinds of food on it, and he goes through and explains like every single type of food on this table and how much of it and what it looks like. Or another part where he's in a different building and there's like this big mural painting thing on the wall, and he goes through every single detail in that painting and describes it in the writing, and it's kind of a lot. But it's definitely holding my interest. I'm really intrigued to see where the story goes, how things play out, if he ever finds his wife again. I don't know. I'm very curious because there's definitely a lot of things coming to light about the sinister and weird things that are happening in this town, and it just has me very intrigued. I'm really into it so far. Okay, I finished The Sanctuary. I don't know what I'm gonna rate it yet, but I just don't know how I feel about this book. I don't know what the point of it was. I feel like the first half, up until the last update that I told you guys, things were progressing and we were learning a lot of like the secrets of this town and the dark and sinister things that happen there, and it did get kind of dark for a little bit, but I feel like the story didn't really have like a point. Like there wasn't really like, there was a conclusion, but not really. Like, I'm just so conflicted with this. Once again, the writing style is definitely not going to be for everybody. It was very dense. There were so many monologues and just things that went on for pages that didn't really add to the story. And towards the end, I was just kind of over it. And for part of those like end monologues, I was kind of skimming it. I don't know. It was just like draining me at the end and just taking a lot of energy to get through, and then at the end to not even understand like what the point of the story was. Like I'm very conflicted on what to rate this. So yeah, as of right now, like I don't really know what to say about this book, which is so difficult. Like I hate when that happens, when you read a book and you're just like, I don't know how to review this, how to recommend it. I don't think it was the worst thing in the world. I think this would definitely be a book for a very specific audience. It is not over the top horror, but there are definitely some, like I said, dark things happening in this town. We also have like the part like crime solving aspect of it, where he is looking for his wife and making all these different discoveries about different people in the town and just like the history of the town as well. And I thought all of that was really interesting, but I feel like towards the end it just kind of fizzled out, and I don't know, I just feel like I was waiting for something big and something crazy to happen, and that just never came about. It's more of like a weird, unsettling horror. Like the tone of the writing, it just leaves you unsettled or like unsure. One other thing that I thought was interesting was, I forgot to update you guys. I meant to say it in the last update and then I never said it. When he talks to the mayor at the beginning of the book and the mayor's like telling him, don't stay out after dark and all this, he asks him like, how did you get here? And he's like, well, you know, I was driving, we rented this cabin, we were driving to the cabin and our car broke down. And the mayor's like, no, like how did you get on the road that you were on, because that road is not on a map and this town is unlisted. Like nobody's supposed to know it's here, so how did you physically get onto that road? And I thought that was like really interesting, but that's the only time that's ever mentioned. Like it never really comes up again. We do learn more about the town itself and like the things that are occurring there and the history of those things, but we don't get any more about like that. I don't know, I just wish that it really leaned more towards that like dark and sinister side of things. It kind of touched on it a little bit, but I wish it would have really dove deeper into it. Like I said, I was just expecting something big and something crazy, and that never really came. Overall, like I didn't dislike the book. I know the beginning for me was boring and then it picked up and I was really into it for a while, and then the end it kind of went downhill and I got bored again. So I can't fully recommend this, but I can't fully not recommend it. Like I said, I would definitely recommend it to a very specific audience. Just know that if you're going to read this, you are going to be reading a very wordy book. It's 195 pages, but it feels way longer than that. It'll probably take you a lot longer to read than it normally would for a book of this size. It's just hard because I know that there are people out there that will really enjoy this type of story. I'm just not sure how to pinpoint who that person is. But if it's something that sounds interesting to you and you like to read translated works, translated horror, then I guess this could work for you. But once again, like, Oh, I don't think I mentioned this in my last update either, and I meant to. I wish that it had like a higher amount of readers. I wish that like people I was friends with on Goodreads had read this. Nobody that I'm friends with or following has read this, and I really love to read like my Goodreads friends' opinions on certain books, and I just want more people to read this so I can see what other people think of it. But then at the same time, I understand why not a lot of people have read it, because it's not going to be for everybody. With that being said, if you're watching this and you've read this book, or you do read this book in the future, please reach out to me and like tell me what you thought about it, because I would be really interested to know. I'm really not sure about a rating. I'm kind of leaning between maybe a 2.5 or a 3 star. We can revisit this later when I have made up my mind, because I just finished the book probably 20-30 minutes ago, so I don't want to go straight to giving it a rating. I want to kind of let it settle with me for a little bit. But I think next I might read a couple of stories from Human Sacrifices and get that started, and then I'll also work on Silver Nitrate as well. So I will come back when I have another update for you guys. I have finished the first story in Human Sacrifices now, and I want to give you guys an update because it was so good, like absolutely fantastic. 5 out of 5. I'm obsessed. Like, this just absolutely blew me away. The first story is called Biography, and it is about this woman who is an immigrant in the US, and she's trying to get a job, but she keeps getting turned down because she doesn't have like the legal paperwork. So she decides to go online and make this post saying that she'll tell somebody's life story. She's like, if you have like a crazy life story and you want me to write it and you want me to tell your story, like, hit me up, basically. And so this guy calls her and he's like, I have this crazy life story, like I want you to come out here and do this for me. And so she's like, okay, and throws out like a ridiculous amount of money because she thinks that he's gonna say no, because she's kind of apprehensive about the idea, but he immediately wires her half the money. So she's like, obviously takes the job because she really needs the money. And so she travels out to this guy's house in this very remote town, and she's just kind of like alone with him. And it was just very interesting. There were a lot of interesting conversations about not only being an immigrant but being a woman, and just how scary things can be by yourself, and just the way that she's like on this journey to this guy's house, and she's like thinking of every worst possible scenario for all of the horrible things that happen to women in the world. And it was really brutal, some of the things. Like, it went very dark. Another thing I thought was really interesting too is she gets to the house and she's like immediately like sketched out by this guy. Like, they're the only two there. She got dropped off by some like anonymous driver who leaves. So there's really like, the guy's house that she's at doesn't have a vehicle, so in order to get back to like the train station, she has to have a driver come out there, which is very complicated. She can't really do that, so she's immediately sketched out. And it's just an interesting conversation where she's saying like, how soon is too soon to like be officially creeped out by this guy. There's this paragraph here that says, how long do you have to wait before casually reaching for an ashtray, a fire poker, a flower vase to smash over his head? How much caution can a cornered animal afford to exercise? What about a woman? And I just think that was like a really interesting idea of this, like, is it too soon to feel this way? Like, am I being paranoid, or should I listen to my instincts and know that something's wrong here? Things definitely go wrong. Some crazy things start to happen, and it goes very dark. Like I said, it's a very brutal, but it was so good. This author, I have never heard of her before, Maria Fernanda Ampuero? I don't know how to pronounce that, but her writing style is so captivating. Like, I was instantly hooked by this, like immediately like pulled in, lured in, and then just like hooked. And I'm so happy. I haven't been having a lot of good luck with short story collections recently. I read Out There Screaming, which was edited by Jordan Peele, and then I read some other anthology that I can't remember. Oh, Shadows of Carcosa, which I read for my Cosmic Horror vlog. and that was just like cosmic horror short stories, and I really didn't enjoy either of those short story collections. And this like has me excited but also a little bit nervous, because a lot of times with short story collections you have some that you absolutely love and then you have some that you really don't enjoy. But this one started off so strong that I'm really hoping it carries that same tone and those same themes throughout. Like everything that I appreciated and loved about this story, I hope continues throughout the entire book, so that we can have like a 5 out of 5 short story collection. I would absolutely love that. The writing style, like I said, is just like insane how good it is. That's that for Human Sacrifices. This is another one that I feel like I hadn't heard of before reading this list, and I don't see a lot of people ever talking about it. I think one of my friends on Goodreads has left a review and he gave it 5 stars, but I think that's like the only thing that any of my friends or following on Goodreads, what am I saying? People that I know, how many of them have read this book? I think it's just that one person. Anyway, the next story is called Believers, so I'm gonna get into that now and see where it takes me, and I'm really excited. So I just got back from a little walk to the library. I picked up the last book that I needed for this video, The Insatiable Volt Sisters. I don't know what I was expecting, but I didn't expect it to be this size. I thought it was gonna be like a standard edition paperback thing, whatever. The point is the book's here, and I just hit myself in the face. Went to the grocery store, got some coffee, and I ended up listening to the audiobook of Silver Nitrate. So I got to chapter 5, which is 56 pages in. I feel like not a lot has really happened. We've gotten the setup, we've gotten introduced to the characters, we're getting a lot of information right up front. So we have the main character whose name is Montserrat. I can't remember how they pronounced it, but she is like a sound editor for like really kind of indie films, and she works all these weird hours, and she's kind of not treated the best where she works because she is the only woman there, but she said like she was basically explaining the way that that company works, because it's not a big name company and they don't work on all these big production films. Like that's why she works weird hours, but then she also gets to work primarily by herself, so she really enjoys it. And then the other main character that we're following is Tristan, who is her best friend, who is an actor, and he has this past where his ex-girlfriend like died in, I think, a car accident, and he was the one driving, and there's all kinds of rumors about him that he like gave her drugs and that he sleeps around a lot. He's also bisexual, so he's facing a lot of backlash because of that. And I think now we are 10 years after her death. Montserrat has a really big crush on Tristan, and he's described as like being really attractive and all this stuff, but that's really all that has happened so far. There was them talking about like cursed films, or just films where during production and during filmings like accidents would happen, the actors would have these crazy stories, so I'm sure that will come back up. I actually didn't even know what this book is about, but I guess Tristan gets a new neighbor who is this really well-known cult horror director, and he was filming a movie that never got completed, and it was one of those like cursed films. And now he gets with Tristan and Montserrat, and they are gonna go and like finish the movie, but then some weird stuff is gonna happen. I don't know. Like I said, I feel like not a lot has happened so far, but we are still in the first like 50 pages, which is usually just set up anyways. But I did get curious, and I went on Goodreads to read some reviews from my friends on there, and a lot of people, it was kind of like people were either giving it 1 and 2 stars, or they were giving it 4s and 5s. Like it's kind of, it seems like one of those books where you either love it or you hate it. I saw a lot of people saying that it kind of has that same tone, like not a lot really happens throughout the entire book. Some people were saying we're given way too much information in the story that is not relevant. There's not a lot of horror elements to it. So I'm just very curious where it will go. This is my first book from this author, but I know she's got some other popular ones. I think, yeah, Mexican Gothic I think is probably her most popular, but I know she's got quite a few books out. So I don't know, we'll see how this goes. I'm gonna eat something and do some editing on a different video, and then I'll pick this up later, or human sacrifices or something, but I'll let you guys know when I have another update. I just want to let you know that I did start this and get introduced to it. I have to be so honest with you guys right now. I am not having a good time with this book at all. I don't know if you can tell just from the way that I'm talking. This book is like physically draining me. It's not holding my attention at all. I'm bored. Yeah, I don't know. I've been listening to it on audio. I tried to go and read physically for a little bit, but that was even worse of an experience because it was so easy for me to get distracted when I was looking at the words on the page. So I went back to listening to it on audio because it's holding my attention like slightly more that way. But now I am to chapter 17, which is page 191 in the physical book. And if you try to ask me to explain anything ever at all that's going on in this book, I can't tell you. Like, there was this film, and it was filmed on silver nitrate, and which is like this type of film that's like, I don't know, really complicated and rare, and it's like not legal anymore because it's like very, very flammable and can like go up in flames very easily. I don't know. And weird stuff happened. Filming stopped. They never got to finish the movie, and then the director never went on to direct another horror movie again after that, and his career ended. And then now that director is connected with our main characters in the book, and they are like looking into what happened, and they're trying to kind of explore the mystery of this film and what happened while they were filming it, and with the actress specifically from the film, and they're kind of making discoveries on that. There have been a couple of weird little things that have happened, but overall it's just like people talking, and then like more people talking, and then more people talking, and then a bunch of information that you don't need, and I'm really bored. The horror so far is pretty much non-existent. Like I said, there have been like one or two weird things that have happened that are kind of glimpses into horror, but that's really like, there's no horror in this book, and it's really, really disappointing. And I don't know if I can do it. I want to finish it for the sake of this video, but like, I know that it's not going to get a good rating, and I hate to push myself to read and finish a book when I know I'm not going to give it a good rating and I'm not enjoying it. I don't know. And then the main characters, Montserrat and Tristan, they're like besties, and like she's supposedly in love with him, and I guess from other reviews they have like sort of a romance in the book. I haven't really gotten any glimpses of that yet. I don't know if that comes later or if it's just more hinted at. But if that is true, I don't understand it at all. I don't even understand why they're friends, because they are so horrible to each other. The way they treat each other, the way they talk to each other, the way they think about each other when they're not together, like, horrible. Like, how are you best friends with this person and that's the way that you think about them? And then you're gonna tell me that they're trying to like develop a romance here? I hate books that have unnecessary romance plots in it. And I hate a book that has a romance subplot that is not done well. Like, if you don't know how to write a romantic relationship, don't do it. I just feel like there's a lot happening and a lot of information being dumped on us that I don't care about, and I just don't know if I can suffer through the rest of it. Like, I don't know. I don't know if I can do it. At the very least, I need to take a break. I do love the cover though. Like, I'm still obsessed with the cover. I think the cover is absolutely gorgeous. On the other hand, this is going very well. I took a break from it. I actually didn't read this for a couple of days, and now we're back. So let's talk about the stories that I've read since I talked to you last. So the next story was called Believers, and this was about this little girl who's growing up in this country where things are not so great, and there is a big strike going on and a lot of protests and a lot of like kind of war type of things, and it's just not a very good place. And then they have these two, like, I don't know if they're missionaries or whatever, some type of two white religious men show up, and they are renting a room at the grandmother's house where the child is staying. And I'm trying to remember. I remember how it ended, but for most of it, I feel like I wasn't really grasping a lot of what I was supposed to grasp. So I gave that one 3 stars, although I did like the ending. All of these stories so far have some kind of really dark twist, especially towards the end. The next story was called Whistle, and I believe I gave this one 4 stars. This is about a woman telling a story that her mother's mom told her mother when she was a kid. And it's the story of the Whistler, and it's basically like this entity or this being that if you hear a whistle or you hear something calling you outside of your window at night, you're not supposed to look, because if you hear it and then you look, then bad things will happen, bad things will come into your life. So the mother of the woman telling the story was told the story of the Whistler from her mother. So it's kind of like a generational thing, but the mother at one point after being told this story heard the Whistler, and she had forgotten about the story by then, and she ended up looking, and then we get to see the truth revealed of what is this bad thing that was brought about by the Whistler. And I thought that was just really, really well done. Once again, short stories are very hard to talk about without spoiling them or giving away too much. This next story was called Chosen. Let me remember what this one is about. Oh, this was a weird one. This was like a fever dream type of story. This is basically about this group of girls. They're like the weird girls, the outcasts, and they were obsessed with these, you know, little cute surfer boys that they knew. But these surfer boys actually ended up drowning, and this group of girls that's obsessed with them goes to the graveyard where they were buried, and weird things occur. That was, like I said, very fever dreamy. I'm not really sure how I feel about it. I think I gave it a 3, maybe a 4. It was interesting, but I'm just not sure, once again, if the meaning of that might have been lost on me. The next story, Sister, was a 5-star for me. This is about this girl and her cousin, and the main character, the girl that we are following, is a little bit overweight, and she kind of feels really self-conscious about that. She gets bullied for that. You know, kids are absolutely brutal. Her cousin is very, very thin. Her cousin has an eating disorder, and she actually ends up befriending this weird girl from school. And strange things happen, but there's a lot of commentary on like being a woman or fat phobia and just the way that kids treat other kids and things like that. And then it kind of had like a supernatural twist at the end, and I really, really enjoyed that. This next one was an absolute 5-star, but it will definitely be very, very difficult for a lot of people to read. It was difficult for me to read, and it dealt with topics that I have not personally experienced. So this is definitely a book that gets dark. It gets brutal. You should definitely look up trigger warnings if you want to read this, but so far, I'm not done with it, but so far I would highly recommend. This is Lorena. I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce it, but this is just an absolutely heartbreaking story about a woman dealing with domestic violence, and it's told beautifully, but once again, it's very, very difficult to read, especially if you are somebody who's dealt with that. I would say use caution, maybe skip that story. And the last one that I read was called Leeches, and I believe I gave this one 4 stars. This is another one that's about like the weird kid, like the weird neighbor kid, and he is just very strange. There's a lot of talk that this kid is like a bastard child, he's the spawn of Satan, and just all these horrible things that people in the town spread. And this kid, you know, he's got little leeches that he enjoys playing with. And I can't say too much more, but once again, as is the theme for this short story collection so far, things seem to take a dark and really messed up twist towards the end. So It's going really, really well. I am absolutely loving this collection. This is probably the best short story collection that I've read in a really, really long time, and I'm absolutely going to look up this author. I hope she has more translated works available because I would love to read more from her. Her writing style is just absolutely gorgeous, and just the themes in her writing I'm loving so, so much. So we have one win so far, one not win, and I am currently reading both of them, so I'm probably gonna put this one down for a little while and decide if I want to pick it back up or not. I don't know. I think I have like 5 hours left in the audiobook, but I listen at like 1.8 speed, so it's a lot less than that, obviously. But I'll let you guys know when I have an update, what I decide to do next, what I decide to read next. Honestly, at this point, I don't know, but that's my update for now. So I'm back with some updates on both Silver Nitrate and Human Sacrifices. Let's start with the good. Human Sacrifices I really, really enjoyed. Overall, when I added up my average rating for all of the stories, I got a 4.1. So that's good news, right? The last story that I left off updating you guys on was called Leeches. So the next one was called Invaders. And this was about this family living in a very, very small like neighborhood. Like there's only a few neighbors. And then they have like a bunch of empty lots, and a lot of homeless people start moving into these lots and kind of taking over. And the father in the family that we're following is very unhappy about it. And one day, one of the kids steals the kite from his son, and he kind of freaks out and goes crazy and like calls the cops, and then it's this big thing. And then there was a really interesting talking point where they were saying like the stolen kite then turned into this, and then it turned into this and this, and like how things will get twisted by the media. And one, maybe, I don't want to say innocent act, but like, I mean, it kind of is like a child taking a toy from another child then turns into, oh, these people are so horrible and so violent, and they just kind of drive them out finally, and then they are still living, and peace has been restored, and then the neighborhood floods, so a lot of the neighbors, the original people, have to move out, but this family is stuck there because they don't have the financial means to move out. And then it slowly kind of becomes like a gentrified neighborhood. They get all these new businesses and all these new kind of wealthy people coming in and building homes. And then, well, I was just gonna spoil the whole thing, but it was really interesting and I really liked the ending of it. I think I gave that one 4 stars, and then the next story was called, I don't know how to pronounce that, Pieta. Oh, this was a story that used certain words and phrases and things in an interesting way. We have this woman who is a mother, she has a son, but she also is kind of like the nanny for this other family. So throughout the story, she refers to the boy that she takes care of as my boy, and then her actual child is my son. Once again, as is the theme, it kind of takes a twist at the end, and I really, really liked it. I think I gave it 5 stars or maybe 4.5 stars. I can't quite remember what I gave that one. The next one was called Sacrifices. This was really, really interesting. The whole story is told just between dialogue between these two people, so it was really, really interesting. Made for a interesting read and a very quick read, but we basically have this couple that just got out of a movie and they're walking in the parking garage trying to find their car, and they can't find it, and it sparks this argument between them, and then all kinds of like past hurt and past arguments come out, and then things start to happen with the parking garage. It starts to change and twist and kind of trap them inside of it, and it just gets weird and distorted, and it was really, really interesting. And then once again had like some weird supernatural twist towards the end. So that story I think I gave 4 stars as well. I can't really remember. This next one was called Edith, and it starts off talking a lot about sex. Also talks about abuse within marriage, abuse to children, and it's just kind of hard to read again. I think I gave that one 3 stars because It was beautifully written. Like, I really enjoyed the writing, but I don't know if I fully understood the point of the story. It just didn't resonate with me as much as the other ones, I guess. And the last story in the collection was called Freaks, and this one also got a 3-star from me. This one was a very weird story about, like, freak shows, and this one boy that is in, like, a freak show, a circus, and another child that sees him and sees the injustices being done to him and decides to do something about it because he doesn't understand why nobody else is doing anything about it. Once again, I gave that one 3 stars because I don't know if I fully understood, like, the message or what the author is trying to get across, but throughout I absolutely loved all of the writing. This author actually does have another short story collection that was translated previously, and that is called Cockfight, so I'm definitely gonna pick that up and read it because this was so good, so brutal, so descriptive at times. Like I said, definitely check trigger warnings. It does get dark, but I would highly recommend. Like I said, this is probably one of the best short story collections that I've read in a really long time, and probably one of the best horror short story collections that I've read in a really long time, so please pick this up if you think you can handle the stuff that's in it. Now, moving on to the not so good, we have Silver Nitrate. It really was a struggle to get through it. I don't want to spend a lot of time. I didn't take my bookmark out. I finished it on audio today, but I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about it. I gave it 2 stars. I did not, like, I was so bored. I didn't care about anything that was going on. I didn't like the characters. I thought they were kind of annoying. I didn't understand, like I said, why they were friends. They had no chemistry. I don't understand why a romance was brought up or tried to be, I don't know, forced upon these characters. It just, I didn't enjoy it. So, to add to our red and black color scheme, I will be starting The Salt Grows Heavy by Cassandra Khaw, which I think is the one that I was, like, most shocked about that it was on this list, because I read Nothing But Black and Teeth when that came out, and myself, among with many other people in the world, I gave it 2 stars. I really did not enjoy it at all, so I was not planning to pick this one up because I just didn't want to. And then seeing other people that had read Nothing But Black and Teeth and gave that bad reviews, they decided to pick this up and also gave it bad reviews. It just kind of made it even more so that I didn't want to give this one a try, but here we are. It came up for the list, so we're gonna try it, and I'm going to go in with an open mind. I'm not gonna go in and say that I'm gonna hate it because that could definitely hinder the reading experience. I'm gonna stay open to it and hope that I can enjoy it, or hope that I can find some elements to enjoy. So I have now finished The Salt Grows Heavy by Cassandra Khaw, so let's talk about it. I will be totally honest with you guys, this really exceeded my expectations. Like, I did not predict that I was gonna enjoy this book very much, but I enjoyed it a lot more than I really did. So this is obviously about this mermaid and this plague doctor, and they kind of set off on this journey and they end up coming across a village. I'm just gonna say how it's described in the synopsis. The pair stumble upon a village of ageless children who thirst for blood and the 3 saints who control them. And the only reason that I want to read that from the synopsis instead of trying to explain it myself is because I don't think I fully understood everything that was talked about in this book, and I think for that reason I'm gonna settle on a 3.5 star. I really enjoyed it, like I said, a lot more than I thought I would, but I don't think I can give it a 4 star because there was so much that I just didn't really grasp or didn't really understand. Obviously, this takes place in like a fantasy type of world. So we know from the beginning that there was some sort of apocalypse where the mermaids perhaps killed off a large population of the humans and ate them because they are very much meat eaters with very sharp teeth. So now we have this pairing between this mermaid and this genderless plague doctor, and I thought it was really interesting. I feel like so many concepts brought up in this were so interesting. The writing as well I really enjoyed. I know the big issue that I had with Nothing But Black and Teeth, and a lot of people had with that book, and I've seen some people review it with this one as well. It's just like, it kind of feels overwritten, where it feels like every kind of descriptive word is just like pulled from a thesaurus, and it's got this really broad vocabulary of crazy weird words, and in Nothing But Black and Teeth it really hindered like my reading experience, and I really couldn't understand like any point of the story. Like I understood the story, but I couldn't really get into it because of the writing. And I feel like it was not nearly as bad in this book. I don't know, it's been a couple of years since I read the other one, so I don't know if it's just like my reading tastes have changed or if the style is a little bit different in here, but I did really enjoy the writing in this and just the world and the imagery within the writing. There's some really solid horror imagery. There's some body horror and just really dark, like gothic vibes to the whole thing, which I really enjoyed. I just wish that we got to know a little bit more about the world. Obviously, this is such a short book. There wasn't really any time spent on like world building or explaining a lot of the concepts that were presented in here, and that's why I feel like there was so much that I didn't understand because it wasn't really fully explored or fully explained within the story, and that kind of makes me a little bit sad because I feel like this could definitely benefit from being slightly longer and taking the time to go into that. I think it could have been a much stronger read for me personally. But overall, I really enjoyed it. Like I said, I enjoyed the imagery, I enjoyed the writing, I really loved the story, the progression of the story, and especially how things ended up. We get a little epilogue that I really enjoyed, and I guess that this is supposed to be like a different take on The Little Mermaid, which I didn't know, but it definitely makes sense because there is, you know, this talk about her prince at the beginning, her husband, and then just the idea of like how mermaids are kind of portrayed in like modern society as being like these beautiful women, and they have these long like tails and, you know, the little shell bras and all this stuff, but when really like mermaids originally I feel like were portrayed as, you know, these really dark creatures with the sharp teeth and the claws and luring men out and eating them and killing them, and this story really brings that element into it, and I really love that. So if you were like me and you read Nothing But Black and Teeth and really didn't enjoy it and were kind of hesitant to pick this up, or you just were not planning to pick it up, I would say go ahead and do it if the concept of it sounds interesting to you, because I think it is a much stronger book than their other one. But I feel like this is good because, like I said, I was really apprehensive and a little bit nervous when I saw this pop up on the list and knowing that I was going to have to read it because I had zero plans previously to read it. But I think it was a good thing that it came up, because now if Cassandra Khaw does go on to publish more books, which I'm sure they will, I will definitely be, you know, more inclined to pick those up because I enjoyed this one, and I feel like their concepts and their writing can be really good when it's done well. Overall, 3.5 stars. I do wish it was slightly longer. I wish we got a little bit more explanation, or maybe I just need to read it again and try to better understand some of the things that were presented in here, but I feel like there was a lot of concepts put into this book that didn't really have the length to it to fully explain those concepts, and that's kind of a little bit saddening, but overall it was a really good experience and I am pleasantly surprised. We need to talk because I am, let's see, 170 pages through Our Share of Night, and I really just want to put it down. I want to stop reading it. Look at, are you one of those people that like every time you put your bookmark in a book after a little reading session you have to look at the dent you've made? Because I always do that, especially with a big book. I don't know, it's so satisfying. Anyway, speaking of big books, I'm just not enjoying this. I don't even know where to start. I have so many thoughts that I want to share with you guys, but I don't know where to start. This book is explained as being about a young father and a son set out on a road trip. Devastated by the death of the wife and mother they both loved, united in grief, the pair travel to her ancestral home where they must confront the terrifying legacy she has bequeathed. The women they mourn come from a clan like no other, a centuries-old secret society called the Order that commits unspeakable acts in search of eternal life. Sounds really, really interesting, right? And from what I've seen of other people reading this and different reviews, like I knew that it was heavy on grief and heavy on love and like family and like that type of thing. Like it had a lot of things to say, but I am just like not picking up on anything right now. I'm really just not enjoying it. I feel like the synopsis that the book gives really does it like a disservice or an injustice, because it just like doesn't, I don't know, it doesn't fully explain like what this book is. So I guess it's just different than what I thought it was gonna be. But I also understand, like with a book this big, like it's talking about so many different things, it's saying so many different things, it's got to be hard to write a synopsis in the first place. But I just like, I don't have a suggestion for how it could have been better, but I know that like this book is so much more than just what it's described as, but I don't know if it's necessarily my type of thing. So we do have the father Juan and his son Gaspar. If I pronounce these names wrong, I apologize. And they, like it says, the mother has died in a accident. She was hit by a bus apparently. So now they're on the road and they're traveling. And from like reviews and stuff, like I thought that their relationship was gonna be like really tender and like heartfelt, but it's not. Like there's child abuse in here that I was not expecting. Juan is very, very like physically abusive to his son, emotionally manipulative. He's like gaslighting him, and it's just like not something that I'm enjoying reading. I do read a lot of books that deal with a lot of hard topics, and I'm not saying like I can't stomach it or I can't handle it. It's just not what I was expecting this book to be, and it really caught me off guard, and I'm just like not really enjoying it at all. I was really slogging to get through the first part. This book is broken up into parts. Let me show you the table of contents. So part 1 is like 140 pages almost, and that is really starting off with these two on their journey. And then part 2 is really short, and it jumps to some other like random character and is kind of like just a short story. And then part 3, which is where I'm currently at, is about Gaspar as a child, like his childhood and his friends. And I'm only just a little of the ways through that part. I really had to struggle through the first part, and I really wanted to push through because I knew that it was separated like that and that it kind of jumped in the timeline. So I thought, well, you know, maybe I'm not really enjoying the first part of this, but maybe I'll like the second part more, or the third part. I feel like the third part does have me like more intrigued, not like intrigued, but it's like I am having a better time reading it than I was with the first part. But just like overall in general, I'm not having a good time. I find myself skimming a lot, and I just don't know how to feel. I feel like there's just so much in this book that doesn't need to be there. And I wasn't sure if I wanted to DNF or what. I'm still not entirely sure. I honestly would have no problem putting this down and DNFing it, because it was never on my TBR to begin with. Like, it was never a book that I wanted to pick up initially, even though I had seen so many people talk about it. It just wasn't one that spoke to me, but I thought, you know, since it came up for this video, that I could give it a try, and I thought I would enjoy it. But I was looking up some reviews and just different discussions about this book and stuff on Goodreads and on Reddit, and just reading about different people, and a lot of people were saying like it is rough in the first part, but if you get through the first part, like it gets so much better, and in the second half everything makes sense and everything's explained and all this stuff. And my issue with it isn't necessarily that like the cult stuff is vague. Like, I don't care, because I know that there's going to be a lot more revealed. It's just everything in between all of that just feels so unnecessary. Like, so many details and descriptions and interactions that I feel like are not important to the plot and don't really need to be in the book. Deep down inside of me, I don't know why, I can't explain why I feel this way, but I know that the second half of this book is good. Have I read it? No, but I know that it's gonna get good. I know that it's gonna get better and it's gonna do everything that it's meant to do. But I feel like, why do I have to struggle through the first half of a book and dislike what I'm reading just to get to the second half of a book that I might possibly enjoy a little bit more? It just like, I just don't get it. You know, all the people on the internet, they're saying like, oh yeah, it's a struggle, but just like keep pushing through and it gets so good and now it's like my favorite book ever. But like, why do I have to push through something that I'm not enjoying in order for me to wait for your book to get good? Like, trying to say that in the nicest way possible, but do you understand what I mean? I'm finding myself skimming at different parts. I was really trying to push through, but I don't think that I can do it. I feel like if this book wasn't as long as it is, like I would just push through and finish it. But, you know, looking at just the mass of pages and words and everything for a story that I'm not really invested in, characters that I'm not connected to at all, I just don't know if I can do it and if I can push through and finish this book. Another thing that I saw is a lot of people talking about, like, specifically kind of the horror elements picking up and like a lot of, I don't know, body horror and like gruesome descriptions and images of different things. And we haven't really seen much of that. We saw, there was like a brief little glimpse of like what's to come, but like I kind of want to know what those parts are, you know? And that's why it kind of keeps me like second guessing, like, should I stop reading it? But then I'm also thinking like, the day that I want to upload this video is fast approaching, and I think I'm already gonna have to push it back. So I don't know if it's worth it to keep trying to push through this book for this video. There is just a lot of things going on in my head because I feel like I want to give this book more time and I want to keep reading it and try to see if it gets better, but I also don't want to do that. Like, I don't want to spend time reading this because any time that I have spent reading it has just been not enjoyable. I get distracted really easily. I find myself skimming. I am waiting to just be able to put it down, and I really don't like when that happens to me when I'm reading. So I think I'm gonna put this down for now. I don't know if I will pick it back up. I probably won't pick it back up for this video, but I don't know if in general I might try to just read it just on the side, just for the experience of it. I'm not sure. One thing I will say though is I do still want to read Dangers of Smoking in Bed. That has been one that's not officially on my TBR, but it's like been on my radar, on my mind. I don't know. I've had my eye on it for a while, just seeing it like everywhere. And I've heard a lot of people say that they really enjoyed that short story collection, but they didn't like this one. And sometimes that happens. You know, you have authors that you really enjoy their short stories, but then their full-length novels are just like not it, or you know, vice versa. So this experience is not turning me off from this author is what I'm saying. Like, she's definitely very, very talented, and I can see why people really enjoy this. I just don't really think that it's for me. Hi, I just got out of the shower, so we're gonna ignore this, but I wanted to update you guys because I'm about to lay down and do some more reading, and I'm halfway through my current book, so I felt like I should probably let you guys know what that was. Last night, after I talked to you guys, I went and I picked up Lone Women and the Insatiable Volt Sisters, and I read the first chapter of both. And it's funny because going by the synopsis, the Insatiable Volt Sisters, oh my god, why is that so hard for me to say? The Insatiable Volt Sisters, based off of the synopsis, was the one that interested me the most, but based off the first chapter, I decided to read Lone Women. The first chapter really pulled me straight into the story. We start off with our main character, whose name is Adelaide, and she is in her home. Her parents are dead, and she is pouring gasoline everywhere. She ends up setting the place on fire, and then she gets into a wagon with a travel bag and this big, heavy trunk, and takes off to go catch a ship, and she goes to Seattle, and then from there she goes to Montana. And basically the reason why she did this is because she found an article of this woman who kind of did the same thing, and she went to Montana with like just over $100 to her name, and then ended up starting this really like successful farm and like have this building and all this livestock there and just kind of made a home for herself. So the reason this is possible and the reason why she wants to do this is because in this place in Montana, they are basically selling this land to any person, and that's obviously the important part because this takes place in 1915. So being a woman, especially a black woman, you can't just go out and buy land. So the fact that they are selling land to any person and they just have to go there and cultivate it and be able to, what is the word, like get crops from the land and sell those crops and just kind of make it like a successful farm in order to stay there. I think they have a certain amount of time that they have to do that. So she decides to take that chance. She comes from like a family that used to grow plums, and you know, they weren't rich by any means, but they did what they did and they were successful with it. So obviously seeing that her parents are dead, she's just burned down her house. She's like, why not just go and start over and try to do this thing in Montana? So she's got her bag and she's got her big trunk and she gets to this property in Montana, and the only thing there from the last person that tried to live there is like a one-room cabin and then a well that doesn't work. And she is just there. Her closest neighbor is 9 miles away and she doesn't have a horse or anything, so she's just trying her best to make it, and some strange things have been happening. I am, like I said, just about halfway. I'm on page 145, so we've definitely gotten a lot more of the horror. At the beginning, you don't really know what's in this trunk of hers, but there's kind of some weird things like foreshadowed or like different things alluded to that there is something weird going on with this trunk. So now we're at the point where like I know what's in it because of the things that I've read, but I am just fully captivated by this book. I think the horror is definitely there, the character development, like just really being able to connect to the characters, but the one thing that really has like pulled me in and really kept me is like the setting of it all, being in 1915 and being in Montana in this very, very small town, and she's just like living on this big piece of land, and just like the whole, I don't know, just the whole time period and the setting of it all just really is like so captivating to me and so interesting to me. I don't really read historical fiction. I'm not a big fan of historical fiction, so I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about that aspect of this story, but I'm really glad that I'm really, really enjoying it. That's probably one of the strongest elements of the story for me. It has really also helped me kind of justify my feelings on Our Share of Night, because thinking about it and thinking about the way that I feel reading this book and how I was absolutely pulled into the story from the beginning and how I'm still loving it and just really enjoying being in the world and being with these characters, like that's how I want to feel when I'm reading a book, and I don't want to spend time on books that don't make me feel that way, especially after I give them like a good chance to try to do that. So that really has helped me kind of feel okay about my decision to DNF Our Share of Night, because I just, everything that I'm feeling towards this book that is good and positive is something that I was absolutely not feeling towards Our Share of Night, and I just don't want to spend time on books like that. I want to be able to read books that I enjoy and find more books that I enjoy, and I think I can definitely do that with this one. I'm really loving it. This is going so well. I just made it to page 209, which is just in the beginning of part 3. I don't think I said that this book is divided into parts, but we just got such a crazy reveal or twist. I don't know what you want to call it, but like something that I was not expecting at all. I thought we had this thing figured out, this thing in the trunk. I thought like we already knew what it was. We had it figured out. But we just got a reveal that totally took me by surprise, totally shocked me. Another thing that I'm really, really loving is we are getting like little chapters from this thing in the trunk. And that's been really interesting just to hear things through that point of view. Thoughts through that thing. I don't know how to really explain it without giving too much away, but I am just absolutely shocked by the information that we just learned. This book is going so good, but I only have about 70 pages left, so it has me really wondering how this is gonna end, how the story is gonna wrap up, and what is gonna happen, but I am really, really loving it so far. The writing is absolutely like gorgeous. Like I love the way that this book is written. Like I talked to you guys, I love the setting. That is probably one of the strongest elements for me, but also like the horror, not only with this thing in the trunk, but also like these other characters that I don't want to say too much about, but have been a very prominent part of the story and have been a really interesting storyline. And there was sort of a reveal with them like kind of early on in the book, but it's really interesting because those are characters that you meet really at the beginning and you don't really think too much of it, and then they come back and they have a really big part, and I think that's really interesting. Just overall, I'm loving this so much, and it's weird, like I can't even really explain why I'm loving it as much as I do, but like it is so good. There are just so many interesting aspects to all of it, and like I said, I'm really excited to see how it wraps up. I'm a little bit nervous how everything is going to wrap up in just the little bit that I have left, but I am just really enjoying my experience with this book, and I'm so happy about it because that's what I needed at this point in my life. Like I have been reading so many, not necessarily bad books, but just very average books, things that I'm like, yeah, like it was good, there was nothing wrong with it, but I'm not gonna probably think about it very much in the future. But this one I feel like is going to stay with me for a while. It's just so good, and now I can't wait to read more from this author. So that's my update for now. I'm gonna go finish this book and then I will see you guys later. I'm so happy to say that I thoroughly enjoyed this book. I am now finished with it, and I'm not sure if I want to give it 5 stars. I think I might go with 4.5 stars. I think on Goodreads I'll probably put it as a 5 and just round up. I feel like I really loved it, but I feel like there was some points towards the end where I was kind of taken out of the story a little bit, and maybe that's why I want to give it a 4.5. But let's just talk about it and see how I feel at the end of it. This was just so good. There were a lot of things, obviously, that I've already talked about. The setting, the characters as well. All of the characters I feel like were so interesting and so fun to follow, but Adelaide as the main character was just like absolutely captivating. I really loved reading from her perspective and just reading about her life and her story. This has a lot of different elements that I really enjoy when it comes to horror. Not only do we have this creature, which is like one of my favorite things in horror, creatures, supernatural creatures like this book does, but also there is like this, you know, the element of kind of widespread panic or like hysteria spreading through this town as this creature gets out, and as people come up missing and people come up dead, and the town is really trying to figure out what's going on. They know that something is happening here and they're trying to find who's responsible for it and deal with those people. There's a lot of death in this book, a lot of brutal death. Like, it's brutal. This book I feel like just shocked me and surprised me in so many ways. Like, went way beyond whatever my expectations were for this book. And not that I really had expectations, but what I thought it was so different from what it actually was and what it did, and I think it was just absolutely fantastic. Not only is it like this historical setting and a supernatural horror, but it also has like suspense thriller elements. Like, we get these crazy twists and reveals that are very reminiscent of like a fast-paced, like twisty thriller, but then it's also very suspenseful and like has you on the edge of your seat. Like, you're just dying to know what happens, and it is just so, I don't know, fascinating. Like, I was fully entranced by this book, by the story, by the writing, by the setting, by the characters. Like, everything about it I really enjoyed. I did like the end as well. I feel like the end was a very nice like way to wrap things up, but this was just fantastic. It really reminds me, I don't even know why, but it's reminding me of Jackal by Erin E. Adams, which is one of my favorite books, but that has kind of like similar elements. I feel like we have the issues of race and like gender equality, And in Jackal, we have all these children that are going missing, but that also takes like a supernatural twist and goes a way that you wouldn't expect from the beginning, and that's what I really loved about that book. So I really loved all of the different twists and reveals. Like, this literally had me like my jaw dropping at some points at the things that were revealed, and just completely caught off guard in so many ways, and I loved it for that. I am still pretty torn between what I want to rate this. I don't know. I'm kind of leaning towards a 4.5, but I'm just not sure. I'll have to think about it, and I will let you guys know when I decide, but I think I'm gonna go to bed for now, and tomorrow I'm gonna start the Insatiable Bolt Sisters. I have the physical copy, and then I went on Libby and I got the audiobook as well, so I can listen to some of that, hopefully get through it a little bit quicker. But Lone Women was a win, and I'm very happy about it. I apologize if it's noisy. The AC is on and I'm too warm to turn it off, but I decided it was time for an update because I am now 180 pages through the Insatiable Volt Sisters, which is approaching the halfway mark. I think it's like 440 something pages. So far, I'm really enjoying it. I'm absolutely flying through this book. Like, it is such a quick read so far, and I'm really, really into the story. I really like the setting of it all. So let's talk about what the book is about, first of all. We have these two sisters, Beatrice, who goes by Bibi, and Henrietta, who goes by Henry, and they grew up on Fowler Island. With kind of like a mixed family, but the two, Henrietta and Beatrice, became very, very close. They were kind of inseparable when they were kids. So what we're reading from, we're reading a dual timeline. We have the year 1989 when they were growing up on this island as teenagers, like preteens, and just kind of like experiencing life together, and they have a very, very close bond. And then we have the year 2000, which is like the present day where the story takes place, and Beatrice calls up Henrietta one day and tells her that their father is dead. So she travels with her mother back to this island, and there are a lot of like weird things going on that we're not entirely sure about yet. Like, we know that there is some strange like council on this island. Like, there is something going on this island that all of the people have gotten together to make sure things run smoothly and that their secrets never get out. So not a lot of that has been exposed, but it has my attention, it has my interest. I'm really, really curious to see where it's gonna go, and just the setting of them being on this island I think is so fun and so immersive as well, especially in the past timeline in 1989 when they're growing up on this island and they're going swimming and they're going and adventuring and meeting all these boys, and like, it's just very, very interesting. Not too much has happened plot-wise. I feel like Henrietta and Carrie have traveled back to the island, they have attended the funeral, they have heard the father's will, and now there are just some weird things to figure out and some secrets to be revealed. Henrietta's mother is definitely acting very, very strange about a lot of things. We are also reading from another character, Sonia, who I believe was like a family friend of theirs and who may have been sort of involved romantically with Carrie back in the day. So we are reading from all four of their perspectives, and it kind of flips back and forth between the timeline and then also the perspective we're reading from, and I think that's really, really interesting as well. I'm definitely enjoying it, and I'm really curious to see where the story is going to go from here. I'm assuming since we're approaching the halfway mark, we are going to start to get some more insight and reveals into what is actually going on this island, and I'm very curious. I'm here for it. It's kind of reminding me of Dead 11, just this like whole island setting and this like mystery surrounding it. Also, like in Dead 11, the whole thing is like they're looking for a missing person. On this island, it is like common for women to go missing. Like, there have been a lot of women that have turned up missing over the years, so that's kind of like a subplot in this as well, or just part of the mystery. So I think it's all very, very interesting. I'm loving the writing style, loving the setting, loving the atmosphere, and I'm gonna keep reading and let you guys know when I have another update. I have finished The Insatiable Volt Sisters. I didn't update you guys too much while I was reading it because I didn't really have a lot to say, but I was enjoying the story. I was enjoying the vibe of it all. It's very like gothic and kind of like fairy tale vibes. Like, I don't know how to explain it, but it had a lot of really interesting elements. I really loved the setting on the island. And it's also really at its core like a story about trauma passed down through families, and these two sisters in particular that are kind of breaking that curse, breaking that trauma that has been passed down. It's definitely like, I would call it a feminist book or describe it as like a girl power type of book, because we have these two characters who are doing something that before them only men have done, and men were thought to be the only ones able to do this. So they are kind of not only breaking like their family trauma and their family curse, but then they're breaking like these gender stereotypes as well. So it definitely had some really interesting elements. There were a lot of horror elements that I really enjoyed, but I don't want to go into specifics because the synopsis I feel like is very vague compared to what actually happens in the book, and I don't want to give anything away, but I really enjoyed a lot of the horror elements. I loved the setting of it all and just the whole feel of it. So I think I'm giving this one 4 stars, which is really good. Unfortunately though, this will be the last book for this video. I still want to read that short story collection, but I don't know what happened. I put the hold on Libby like weeks before I even started filming this video, and I was second in line. So now I'm first in line. There is somebody else that has it, but I don't know what's going on because they've had it for weeks and it just hasn't come to me yet, and it still says there's like a 2-week wait. So I'm a little bit sad about that. But I definitely will still be reading that when it comes in. So if you guys want to follow me on Goodreads or just kind of watch some monthly wrap-ups on here, hopefully I'll be able to get it in March and it'll be in my March wrap-up. But if not, like I said, you can friend me on Goodreads and I'll leave a review once I get to it there. But unfortunately, that is it for this video because I have to upload it and move on to other things. So let me take a minute and gather my thoughts on everything, and then I will come back and do one final last update, and we'll go through everything that I read and everything, all the ratings that I gave out. So here is everything that I read in this video and what I rated it. First off, I had already read Black Sheep and What Kind of Mother, so we had a 4-star and a 3.5 star. Then we had a DNF with Our Share of Night. Silver Nitrate I gave 2 stars. Lone Women I gave 4.5 stars. The Salt Grows Heavy I gave 3.5 stars. The Insatiable Volt Sisters got 4 stars, as well as Human Sacrifices, and The Sanctuary got 2.5 stars. So I think the biggest wins for this video, or the ones that really stand out in my head, are Lone Women and Human Sacrifices. The Insatiable Volt Sisters as well, but I feel like, I don't know, I feel like the other two were better in my opinion. And then we did have some losses as well. I hate to DNF a book, especially for a reading vlog, but you just gotta do it sometimes. And then Silver Nitrate, obviously I didn't really enjoy that much. But overall, I feel like it was a pretty good list. The 8 books that I actually read off of this list, 3 were 4 stars, 1 was 4.5 stars, 2 were 3.5. So the majority of them got a pretty good rating overall. So that was that for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I know this was a really long one, so if you've made it this far, you deserve like a cookie or something, I don't know. But hopefully I will see you guys next time.